Hey, Skift listeners, hear about the latest trends in the travel industry with the Brand USA Talks Travel podcast. Right now, listen to special live from IPW interviews featuring U.S. Travel's Jeff Freeman.
DMOs are at the heartbeat of U.S. travel.
Liz Bittner from Travel South.
A lot of key gateway markets are back.
LA Tourism's Adam Burke.
We all win when we all partner together.
Plus, Brand USA's Stacey Melman and Jackie Ennis with international travel trends and Chris Thompson's farewell finale. I'm Mark Lapidus. Join us for Brand USA Talks Travel on your favorite podcast platform.
Brand USA Talks Travel.
You're listening to the Skift podcast. Skift's Megatrends for 2024 were released at the beginning of the year, our 12th annual reporting on the trends defining the travel industry. Today, we're presenting the first episode in a series highlighting these megatrends, featuring Skift's editor-in-chief Sarah Kopit and senior hospitality editor Sean O'Neill. They discussed the megatrend that Sean himself penned, entitled How Hotels Will Seduce the Middle-Class Traveler, where Sean explains how a growing global middle class and ample opportunity in mid-market hospitality should result in continued and increasing investment in so-called select service hotels. Sean spoke with Wyndham Chief Marketing Officer Lisa Checchio at the Megatrends release event in New York last week, and he relays how Wyndham and other major hotel players such as Hyatt and Hilton are approaching this focus on mid-scale. Sarah and Sean also discuss other megatrends related to the growing Indian middle class, the impact of artificial intelligence, and the controversy surrounding hotel junk fees. You can read Skift's Megatrends for 2024 right now at skift.com/megatrends. Enjoy the conversation.
Each fall, as the new year approaches, the Skift editorial team gets together and talks about the big themes of the year to come.
This is tens of thousands of hours of talking to you, people in the travel industry through the year, coming up with the stories, research reports, our events, etc., and then us connecting the dots across all of those headlines.
Over a period of months, we boil them down, and eventually we get to this list that become our megatrends. Nature's wrath by way of climate change.
The long-term opportunity that hotel groups have in appealing to the middle class.
The role that travel can play in solving this crisis of loneliness that we're seeing.
Corporate greed and junk fees.
Is the travel industry ready for it? Has anybody thought about it?
We are on a mission to help you make sense of the year to come. So here's our take on the travel sector, 2024 style.
Okay, let's get started.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first of Skift's podcast series on our Megatrends 2024. This is an exciting one, our first one. I'm joined here by Sean O'Neill, our senior hospitality editor here at Skift. Sean, how are you doing today?
Very good, Sarah. How are you?
Good. It's cold here in New York. We had our very first snow day here in like 2 years. So, the city is icy this morning.
Very, very cool. Yes, I'm heading off to LA sort of after this podcast is recorded, because we have a major hotel industry conference called Alice. And so I'll be reporting from there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the warm weather coming up.
Oh my gosh, can't wait. So without further ado then, let's just jump in and talk about the middle class traveler. That was your megatrend this year. So why don't you first tell everybody why you think the middle class traveler is so important to the hospitality industry in 2024?
Sure, Sarah. Well, the middle class is growing worldwide. Demographers expect another 700 million people to join the middle class by 2030. And as people enter the middle class, they like to travel more. One reason is that many people see it kind of as a status symbol. This is something that we don't talk about a lot in the industry, but you've arrived in the middle class when you're able to go somewhere just a little bit nicer than your sister-in-law's family, maybe. And so why are hotels interested in wooing the middle class traveler? I guess I would say that was something I asked last September in New York at Skift Global Forum. I asked Hilton CEO Chris Nassetta about this on stage.
We're the fastest growing luxury brands on earth, with Waldorf and Conrad and LXR. But what you've heard me say publicly, and I'm happy to say it here because I know it, I am confident I will be right. The opportunity on a global basis for growth over the next 10, 20, 30 years is in the mid-market. Why is that? It's obvious. Because that's where the growth demographically is in the middle class. And what can middle class customers afford? Mid-market products, whether it's hotels or anything else. So when you wake up in 10 or 20 years and look at X number of millions of rooms were built over that time frame around the world, they were going to disproportionately be in the mid-market.
So as Niseta said there, chasing the mid-market is about chasing demand. But supply is also a factor, Sarah. So hotel supply isn't growing fast enough to keep up with the demand. When you have 700 million more people joining the middle class over the next 7 years, the level of construction of new hotels because of regulatory red tape just is not keeping pace. Conversions of older properties into newer hotels is also not keeping pace. It's partly because of financing issues in emerging markets. And we're recording this podcast here in the U.S. And roughly 2/3 of all hotels in the U.S. are branded by one of the major hotel groups. But only about 1/3 of them are independently run. But you have to think about it. It's the flip of that when you're outside of the U.S. In much of the world, 2/3 or overwhelming majority of hotels are independently run, and only 1/3 is branded. So what is the opportunity? If you're a hotel group and you're trying to increase your brand, you're saturated in the US, so you need to go abroad in order to have growth. And when you're going abroad to have growth, you've got what kind of supply do you have? The biggest supply that you have is these mid-tier properties. They're ones that are in like premium economy up to mid-scale. And so that's your biggest hunting ground for being able to convert existing properties. So then you want to create mid-tier brands that will appeal to those owners who want to convert. So there's a few factors there. I mean, we're talking about like 1.2 million rooms just in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa that are in the mid-scale category. And so if the hotel groups can convince a lot of them to appeal to these mid-tier travelers by adopting these global brands, that'll be good for everyone. So I think it's a combination of factors. That was my long-winded answer, Sarah. There's a few things at play. It's supply, it's demand. Yeah.
So we called our megatrend, the seduction of the middle class traveler. But I'm kind of curious, what does that seduction really look like? Meaning, what are the hotels doing to appeal to that middle class traveler?
Yeah. So I think to make a generalization, I think the middle class likes clarity and value. They like the clarity of what is it that they're going to get, and they want to have a sense that it's a value. So they like knowing, that what they're going to get, what is going to be the all-in cost. So free Wi-Fi, so that they know everyone in the family who have all their different devices are going to be able to log on.
I can tell you,
yes.
with my two kids and my husband and I, when we go, and that free Wi-Fi is like clutch, like free Wi-Fi, free breakfast. There you go. These are the two pillars of a successful hotel stay with small children. Continue.
Do they like the waffle makers or
yes?
Breakfast? Yes.
I mean, I like the waffle maker. Forget the kids. I like the waffle maker.
I do too. There was one. I forget what the name of the brand is, but they have like a little conveyor belt, and you can make little like treats on it. I'm just like, oh, my inner child.
Exactly. Yes.
And swimming pools are also, for some families,
Yeah.
that's another lure.
Yep.
Very, very small child-friendly ones. So the idea is you have some amenities that are included in the rate that are going to appeal, but then you get rid of some of the things that are going to push the price out of reach. So it's hard if you have a full, you may not really need a sit-down restaurant for 3 meals a day at a hotel. You're out and about. So why have that added cost into the structure? You might not need a fitness center, for example. You're not a business road warrior. You're just sort of coming in. And so you remove some of the things that would make you a full service hotel in order to try to keep the cost down. So I think that's generally what the seduction looks like.
Yeah, okay. So at our Megatrend event in New York, you actually spoke with Wyndham about this. Can you tell us a little bit what Lisa had to say about how this is playing out for them?
Yeah, I spoke with Lisa Checchio, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of Wyndham.
I know we're talking about this as a mega trend in 2024, but if we go back to the early days of the pioneers of hoteling, especially in the US, it started in 1970 when Cecil B. Day created Days Inn, right? And he's actually given credit to finding the new segment that we're talking about right now, the value-conscious traveler. And his mantra was find a need and fill it. And so 54 years later, we're now talking about this as a mega trend, but this has always been something that has been ingrained in Wyndham. Days Inn by Wyndham is one of the largest brands in the world, almost 2,000 hotels. Super 8 by Wyndham, very close. La Quinta by Wyndham, Howard Johnson by Wyndham. These are all household names that were built and tailored to this middle class, this traveling middle class. And so there really is no one who knows this class better than us. And it has allowed us to actually divert from those very early days of those brands to the trends that you've actually been following these last couple of years, like all-inclusive.
I think one thing that can be easy to forget for some of the younger listeners is that when Marriott and Hilton got their start, they were very much sort of like, it was an upper experience. It wasn't a mass market motel type, whatever your idea, roadside hotel business model. And so brands like Days Inn were sort of like the first to sort of like believe that you can actually make the economics work by appealing to the mid-tier traveler, as a broad generalization. And so Wyndham, according to Lisa, they've continued to try to build out this. And so one of their latest brands is called Ultra, which is for all travel, is kind of like the concept there. It's an all-inclusive resort brand. And the idea is if you're a middle-class traveler, it's double income household, you're busy, you got 2 kids, and you really don't want to think about having to put together a whole vacation. You just want to have a little quick getaway. Let's have the all-in price. That the yoga is going to be included, the alfresco dinners on the beach is going to be included, the happy hour drinks are going to be included. When you're budgeting, you can just book and go. And so that was their thinking behind one of their latest brands, Ultra. So I think that is kind of the pattern we've seen in other mid-market brands, mid-tier brands. Marriott last year launched. So just to make it clear, it's not just Wyndham that's sort of looking at this. Marriott last year launched 4 Points Express by Sheraton as a mid-scale brand in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. IHG launched Garner as a mid-scale conversion brand. Hyatt launched Hyatt Studios, which particularly caught my eye because it's their first time. They've almost all their brands and all their businesses in the upscale, premium, and luxury. And so this is their first step down to the mid-tier. So even a brand like Hyatt is sort of seeing the same thing that Lisa at Wyndham was sort of pointing out when she was talking with us in New York last week.
Yeah, so you talked about value, and obviously for the middle class traveler, I think value is a no-brainer. That's probably, if not number one, right up there with one of the most important aspects. So loyalty points and just the loyalty programs in general kind of contribute to that value proposition. Tell us a little bit about where the hotels are with their loyalty programs as it pertains to this group.
Yeah, so Lisa at Wyndham, she was as chief marketing officer there. She was saying that, she's pointed out that her brand, as we say, her family of brands, while they do have a little bit of luxury and a little bit of lifestyle, they are very sort of like down the middle on the mid-tier, mid-market, middle-class brands. And so they've purposely designed their loyalty program for a few things that they feel like the middle-class traveler values. And so they've kept things simple.
We want our members to know exactly what they're going to get for their points. We've kept the redemption tiers to 3. You can start earning points for as little as 75, free nights for as low as 7,500 points. The currency never changes. It's very, very simple. I think there's like beauty in the simplicity. We know that members belong to multiple loyalty programs, and when they're trying to pit them against each other in terms of where am I going to extract the most value, our program has always risen above the rest.
Which is sort of like if you're not a road warrior who's putting 180,000 miles, every year, you don't need all these subtle gradations of tier classes as you go up. If you're a family and you're just traveling a couple times a year in vacation, you can start in the Wyndham program. You can start redeeming free nights after only about 7,500 points. It's a very easy to understand program because the currency never expires. And Wyndham has seen Skift has sort of run the numbers in the past 5 years. Wyndham has seen enrollments grow up like 78% over 5 years to 105 million. That's a faster pace of growth than Marriott has had, than its rival Choice has had. So they seem to be onto something with this formula of trying to keep things simple and have a very clear, quick value proposition for the middle class. And I think we're seeing some of the other programs, IHG, for example, retooled its loyalty program a little over the year ago. Others are also trying to do this simplification effort because that seems to be what's appealing for the middle class traveler.
Hey, Skift listeners, hear about the latest trends in the travel industry with the Brand USA Talks Travel podcast. Right now, listen to special live from IPW interviews featuring U.S. Travel's Jeff Freeman.
DMOs are at the heartbeat of U.S. travel.
Liz Bittner from Travel South.
A lot of key gateway markets are back.
LA Tourism's Adam Burke.
We all win when we all partner together.
Plus, Brand USA's Stacey Melman and Jackie Ennis with international travel trends and Chris Thompson's farewell finale. I'm Mark Lapidus. Join us for Brand USA Talks Travel on your favorite podcast platform.
Brand USA Talks Travel.
So another one of our megatrends this year was about the Indian middle class. What do you think is the mid-market opportunity for Wyndham and hotel groups like them in India specifically, which is just a massive, massive market?
It's a massive market, and it's a fascinating question to address. My colleagues, Peden in particular, Peden Bhutia, who's based in India, she's done some really great coverage of how the different hotel groups are trying to tackle that market. It is the leader locally, Indian Hotels Company Limited. They have seen tremendous growth. They're just reporting just astonishing levels of development pipeline for the next few years. In Wyndham's case, they have roughly about 30 hotels currently in India. They're planning to triple that over the next 5 years. Marriott, just this month, has introduced the Moxie brand in India, and Moxie is kind of like, it's sort of like your starter mid-tier brand. It's if you think about it as a hotel chain scale, it's one of the most accessible brands in the Marriott portfolio, and they see introducing it in India as an opportunity. And so I think one way to think of it is, some of these hotel groups, when they've gone into some of these markets in the past, they just put in one big luxury hotel in each major city in like India. And what they're now starting to do is they're trying to fill out, create a base to tap into this rising mid-tier, middle class that's emerging. And then the hope is that it's an escalator. And so gradually you can see the travelers, as time goes on, are going to rise up the escalators and check out additional new brands. So I think, Sarah, that's kind of where it is on India's a rising middle class.
And I'm curious to get your thoughts on China. Like, they're the other big juggernaut, right? So, and it's a completely different analysis in China. What are you seeing there?
So China is fascinating. And so, yes, it's very much, again, targeting the mid-tier is where all the hotel development pipeline action is. Hyatt is the hotel group that has the most exposure there. 40% of all the hotels that they have in their pipeline coming out from now until eternity are in China. You have Hilton, is planning to dramatically increase. Marriott dramatically increase their presence there. But it is a tricky market because they do have their own homegrown brands. And American companies have really struggled. We've seen again and again, Airbnb pulled out after trying. TripAdvisor pulled out of China after trying to build something local. There are very competitive. Jinjiang is a local one. H World. There are players on the ground that have a lot of advantages in trying to appeal. And I think one of these X factors that I have, Sarah, this is sort of like a big slightly off topic is, I don't know how things play out if there's continued geopolitical tensions between the US and China. Are domestic Chinese travelers going to be like, if we have a choice, why go with the American affiliated brand? Why don't we go with like a Chinese domestic brand? I don't know how it's going to quite play out there. But in terms of incremental growth right now, the major hotel groups are like full speed ahead on development there. And it's very much the mid-tier markets thereafter.
Yeah. Another one of our megatrends was on junk fees. And so, we've kind of taken our signals from the government, from the Biden administration, from various decisions that are coming down the pike this year. So we talked about value. How are junk fees, like what do you think is going to happen to junk fees in 2024? Hotels are really right in the line of fire with these, with these fees, resort fees, et cetera, et cetera. What are you seeing? How do you think it's going to play out? How do you think it's going to affect the hotel groups, especially in the mid-market range where, you've got, so this is where when people go check out, these are the folks that are really looking at the bill, and making sure that their value was received.
Yeah, I think going back to the point that we talked about earlier, I think the classic psychology of a middle-class traveler is they like to know exactly what it is they're getting. They want clarity of the all-in price. They don't want to be lots of surprises when they get to the bottom line or when they get to paying at the bill at the end. And so what the situation here is, particularly, it's about destination fees, resort fees. These are mandatory fees. You have no option on paying them, but they're not disclosed up front. So it's very hard to comparison shop when you're looking at different sites if one site doesn't disclose what the actual total price is. And so what is particularly interesting is that going into effect in June of this year, California has 2 laws. And because 1 out of 8 Americans lives in California, that has a big impact for the hotel groups. You probably have a presence there, and you're probably going to have to address this issue. And that is, California is requiring you to disclose upfront on your site and app the total fees, that you get to see what the total cost is, including any mandatory fees. And so what I believe is going to happen is that hotel groups, it's just going to be simpler to standardize nationwide. Why create something that looks different in the California market if you're viewing in California rather than just have something for everyone? And so I believe there's going to be a streamlining. There is separately, the FTC just had a closing of comments on a potential changes in regulations. So the Biden administration is looking at whether they need to take action. Hilton's CEO at Skift Global Forum called on the industry to sort of just adopt, everyone be on the same level playing field. And just this one final point I want to make on this is Hilton CEO Chris Nassetta is quite concerned, like, well, what good is it if the hotel sites and apps adopt this new change when
the OTAs and more importantly, meta search, we all have to be on the same place. It doesn't really matter if Hilton shows it the right way, but because everybody, not everybody, but a large component of the population is starting in Google to do comparison shopping. And so they're going to get, if there's a belief that it's misleading, they're going to get misled before they ever get anywhere near us. So my view is even playing field. If you're going to, the product is the product, and no matter where it gets distributed, it should be displayed the same way.
So they would like to see a national law. So it is a little bit of a jump ball. I'm kind of curious which way it's going to go, Sarah.
So let's talk a little bit also about AI. It's been kind of the darling of conversation on, for business in the last year since ChatGPT and other generative AI bots have come out, like really like gangbusters, really kind of changing everything. I can definitely see one of the most compelling business cases that I've heard. It was actually from Brian Chesky describing how they use AI to kind of help in their call centers when something goes wrong. And, even though you may think that your issue or your problem is incredibly unique, It's not. So there, there might be what 100 problems that people have, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and more thousands of situations that AI can run through and give, the 3 with the best outcome. You give those to a human, and then, that helps them walk through. So how are the big hotel chains using this AI technology? Is it in call centers? Is it in marketing? Is it in the personalization push that we all love that we don't even kind of realize is happening, but they're really getting us with that? Talk to me a little bit about how that is working in 2024.
Yeah, so I think there's two fronts on that. So you mentioned the call centers. So Lisa Checchio at Wyndham, she was pointing out that one of the things that they're doing is they're using generative AI for training their staff in their call centers.
The first time you call to ask me about something is not the first time I take that call. I'm actually able now to run simulations, 30, 50, 100 different simulations, so that it helps me to feel more confident when I actually speak to a guest of how I can solve that issue. And it helps with employee turnover. We've actually seen our retention rates go up because those first handful of weeks and months that someone's on the job, they've now been able to go through training and they feel good about it.
I use generative AI every day for my job. I feel like it's a little mini miracle.
Yeah.
But
same.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's such a tool. It's really striking after using Google for like 20 years, just how easy it has been to like slip into another habit. And so I think I am worried that the hotel industry in general has been a little slower to adopt technology than some other sectors like finance and retail. And so I worry that what we're going to end up is a customer service sort of hell where you go into chat, you have to go into a chat. It's a computer that gives you some answer. And there are certain situations where you're trying to get a connected room for your teenagers, so that you can have a little bit of privacy and quiet, but you want to be able to keep a monitor on them. And you're trying to negotiate that with this AI chat button. It's not going to give you an answer. So I'm interested to see how the implementation goes. The one other thing that you mentioned is like the personalization, which is very important. I talked with Lisa from Wyndham after we got off stage to ask her a little more about it. And one of the things she was saying is that in the marketing game, companies like Best Buy and Sephora are considered best in class at using generative AI for marketing savvy. And they will A/B test. They will send out one set of subject lines to one people, another set to other. The kind of ads that you're featured will all be tailored on the information that they have you. And what's next is video. Generative AI will be very good at Sam Altman of OpenAI says that by the end of this year, they're going to have video ways of presenting the information. And that is going to be pretty transformative because it's a much more easier way for particularly the middle-class traveler in order to ingest information as you see a little video of it rather than having to read a whole block of confusing text.
Yeah. And I mean, I just think about like my kids are like middle school age and, all they do is watch TikTok and consume information that way. So the younger crowd, I mean, they're growing up on video in that way, in those little short clips of how to do things, and sometimes I ask my 9-year-old, how did you learn how to do that? She's like, oh, TikTok. I mean, I don't even need to ask anymore. It's like, all of that stuff. So yeah, that is super interesting. So also, we talked a lot about, the Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, how they are all really diving into the middle class, launching all these brands in the past couple of years to attract this particular audience. Is the market, do you think, getting too crowded? Is there going to be too much incoming supply? Are we heading in that direction? Can you read the tea leaves for us?
So fortunately, I don't have to because Skift Research earlier this year published a report titled Hotel Chain Scale Analysis 2023. And if you're a subscriber, you can get all the details. But the high level is that they looked at the different chain scales, as they're called. So you think about upscale as a fancier hotel than kind of hotel than like an economy brand. And so there's a whole variety of gradations you go up. And they analyzed and they found that one of the biggest white space opportunities is in the mid-scale premium economy. They looked at data from lodging econometrics. They looked at data from STR. They looked at financial filings from the major hotel groups. And the trend that they found is like on the supply side, construction starts are way below the 10-year average when it comes to hotels. Conversions have been below the historical average, meaning properties that are moving from one brand to another or moving from like an office space and being converted into a hotel, that's also behind. So the supply is not keeping up with the demand. The demand is above the average for hotels when you come to these mid-tier properties. So yes, we have seen, as you say, Sarah, a flurry of new brand launches in the mid-tier segment in the past year and a half. But it's Skift's research judgment is that there's more demand than supply, and it's going to be fine through 2030 or so.
Good news for the hotels then. Sean O'Neill, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today on our Megatrends 2024. Thank you all for listening today. We are going to say goodbye there. If you want to read our Megatrends, please check it out online, skift.com/Megatrends. And this was only the first of a series of podcasts with our authors and writers. So please come back, stick around. They'll pop every week. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sarah.
This has been the Skift Podcast. Thank you for listening.